All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to talk about, of course, one of the biggest reveals in Wuthering Waves history. And that is, of course, the kit of Zani. And I'm ready today to go over exactly what she's going to do, the different sort of specifications that are going to be in her kit, some of her best teammates right off the bat, because I'm going to be honest here, she's got one of the most unique kits we've ever seen in the game. And so with that, the Twitter page isn't going to be enough, so let's just go ahead and pop ourselves over to the actual website itself and get right on into it in all of her horned glory. I'm Zani. I work for the Montelli family. Blah, 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 blah. Eyeshadow. Very nice. Very nice. She's just stressed all the time and doesn't get enough sleep. Let's go ahead and take a look at her character profile, get into some of her details. She's going to be Spectro, of course. It's really odd that they're using all this red coloring for her, even when, like, her tie is kind of like the only thing that is red, instead of like the traditional yellow or the traditional gold that we might be seeing for Spectro units. Bit of an interesting vibe, for sure. Bit of an interesting vibe. But she is going to be Spectro. Her weapon is going to be a gauntlet, which is a little bit strange considering how much footage we've seen of her swinging around a gigantic greatsword. And her ascension mats are going to be the Gargoyle, the Sentry Construct. It drops Sword Acarus, which is just something that we can find in like the 2.0 region. Polygon cores, and then for the skill materials, Cadence Seeds, as you might expect, Polygon cores, even more of them, and the Hecate boss mat. So do make sure that you're farming this boss and not the most recent one, Fleur de Lis, if you're looking to get the most out of her. We also have an idea of what her best in Slash Sonata set's going to be, and we'll explain what that is later. Zani's got her normal attack, and this is a normal attack that functions kind of uniquely. You're going to see over here that there are kind of two attack chains that she's doing over here. That's because she has a bit of a timing-based mechanic. On this attack, she's going to attack 3 times right now, and then miss the timing. However, on this one, she hits the timing and then follows up with a 3rd one, or a 4th one, and then a 5th attack. So this is basically how it's going to work. She performs up to 4 consecutive attacks to deal spectral damage. After performing basic attack stage 3, press normal attack at the right time to perform a special attack called Breakthrough. And this is what Breakthrough is. Not that one. She throws that thing, right? She throws that thing. And the attack Breakthrough is when she, like, dashes backwards. Or, sorry, not that dash backwards. When she, like, you know, puts her shield like that and then, like, moves backward like that. That's the breakthrough attack, and then when she throws the shield and then dashes through them, that is going to be the 4th attack. Right? The 4th attack is right here, where she, like, grabs the shield with her foot and then kicks them. She then has also a heavy attack as well, where she's just going to use stamina to hit the target, and then she can press the normal attack button within a certain timing to do basic attack stage 3, and then do breakthrough, and then follow up with more, right? So you can kind of see how a lot of it is based off of her doing that 3rd attack, and then hitting the timing to do breakthrough, and then use her stage 4 attack. She also has a mid-air attack, which, similarly like her heavy, is also going to allow her to follow up with the 3rd stage of her basic attack. And then after a dodge counter, well, that's going to be the 3rd hit of her basic attack as well, and then you can follow up at the right time to cast breakthrough. So a lot of this is just going to be her following up with a lot of these moves with the 3rd hit of her basic attack, and then you want to use breakthrough at the right time, and then use the 4th basic attack if you're trying to complete the entire attack chain. Next up, we're going to have our resonance skill, and this is the parry move and the big great sword slam. That's the parry over there. And this is the enhanced version, which you can either charge up or the enhanced version activates if she gets hit during the charge up of the enhanced version. There's a lot of words that go into it. That was the simplified explanation. So let's get into some more of the details. She attacks the target to deal spectral damage and then enters a block stance. This state ends early if Zani is switched off the field. Press the normal attack within a certain time frame to perform the 3rd hit of her basic. Right? The one that can be followed up with breakthrough and then the 4th one. She's going to recover 10 points of redundant energy, which is basically her Forte Circuit, and then she's also going to stagnate the target, which, if you're familiar with the game, you're familiar with how stagnation works. If you're using Spectro Rover, stagnation is what you get on Spectro Rover's outro. That basically freezes the target or slows them down a lot. And so you can kind of see that Spectro is oriented around time manipulation, time slowdown, so that enemies can't necessarily damage you as much. So that's going to be an effect that happens when you're following up with those attacks. If you're attacked by an enemy in the block stance, you're going to reduce the instance of damage by 100%, completely block it, stagnate, once again, do that time slow, and then cast a resonance skill called Pinpoint Strike, which is going to deal damage, and then also reduce their vibration strength by 5%, making Zani very good, hypothetically, against bosses. And she's also going to get a damage reduction debuff of 30% over the next 2 seconds, which is a little bit short, but you do get a nice reward for hitting that parry. We're just going to get a quick animation of that. That's what it looks like, Pinpoint Strike. And you're going to get that defense buff afterwards. She's also going to get, her shield glowing to indicate that you have the buff. Very short duration, though. Next, she has Crisis Response Protocol, and that is going to be her enhanced resonance skill. When Zani is not in Inferno mode, or basically her liberation state, where she takes the tie off and then Super Saiyan, and she has full redundant energy, or her Forte Circuit, her resonance skill is replaced with Crisis Response Protocol. You're going to hold it to enter the ready stance, and while you're in the ready stance, she's immune to interruption, which is great, right? Because you're sitting there for like a full second, taking the greatsword back and just charging it. This state ends early if Zani switched out the field, so you can't like parry from off-field with her. After releasing the resonance skill button, or when the stance duration ends, you're going to use all of your Forte Circuit to cast targeted action, which is the multiple greatsword slams, and that's going to deal Spectral Frazzle damage. And so we'll see exactly what that move looks like. That's the counter version of it, but that's the attack, right? And you can also charge it as well and do the attack too. Well, that's just the baseline resonance skill with no full Forte Circuit. Pretty clear what's going on, but it's just a lot of words to indicate it. The part that I want to focus on over here is the fact that she deals Spectral Frazzle damage. And this is the thing, ladies and gentlemen. It can get a little bit complicated. What actually buffs that? Because there's kind of only one outro skill in the game that buffs Spectral Frazzle damage. And that is going to be Phoebe in Confession mode, where first and foremost, she reduces the spectral resistance of nearby targets by 10%, and then grants 100% Spectral Frazzle damage amplification. And so the trade-off for this is that Phoebe makes it take longer for Spectral Frazzle to tick down, but because of how Zani's kit works, her attacks outright just deal Spectral Frazzle damage. This is going to be a pretty big buff. I know 100% seems crazy, but this is the thing, right? 100% is a lot, but Zani doesn't do Spectral Frazzle damage on every single one of her moves. Only part of her kit. And you're going to see in her Forte Circuit and her Liberation what exactly I'm talking about over there. Another buffer to Spectral Frazzle damage is, of course, Phoebe's Signature, which, when you cast the outro skill, it's going to add another 30% amplification. And so Phoebe with Luminous Hymn is going to be one of the biggest buffers that Zani's going to have across her entire rotation. You got the Spectral Resistance Reduction, you got the Spectral Frazzle damage amplification, and it's going to be a big power boost over Rover, who kind of, they'll apply Spectral Frazzle, which is going to be important for her kit later, and then is only going to get that 10% reduction, which Phoebe already has on her outro skill. And so, really, the strength of Zani is going to depend on, of course, whether or not you have Phoebe, but I still want to wait and see how her performance is with Spectral Rover in a bit more of like a free-to-play setup. And so we'll see where all these additional Spectral Frazzle relationships are going to go from there as we go through the rest of her kit. When she's attacked in her ready stance, you guys saw the parry already. It's going to have the same exact effect: vibration strength reduction, damage reduction. And if you use targeted action, the big greatsword slam, when she uses her Forte Circuit, she's going to gain a buff called Sunburst, which will inflict a stack of Helical Ember, which is like her version of Frazzle, and then also recover Blaze, which is a meter that she's going to have in her Liberation state. She's also going to have her own form of Spectral Frazzle damage amplification of 20% over here when she's in the Sunburst state. I'm not necessarily sure how long it's going to last. Probably around like 14 seconds, 15, 16, kind of like an outro skill. Or it's going to last like 30 seconds. But 30 seconds does seem like a little bit long. And so I would just imagine probably 14 seconds like an outro skill. And she's going to gain her own damage amplification just for Spectral Frazzle. Next up, we're going to have Resonance Liberation. And so she has the first move where she transforms. And then she has the ending hit where she does like that clock slam. So that's going to be what Zani has available, 2 full liberations. And the first one just gives her a buff across her entire moveset. And the second one, right, is this finishing move that ends her liberation state. And so let's talk a little bit about that. First, she has the first part that's called Rekindle. It's going to deal damage to enemies and then enter Inferno mode. And then increase her Blaze, which is basically like what she builds up, a secondary resource she builds up across her rotation that buffs her liberation damage. Not her resonance liberation damage, but the damage she deals during her liberation. It increases the cap from 100 to 150 and then grants 50 blazes. And when in Inferno mode, the multiplier of her basic attack is increased. And so the thing is, right, you naturally will want to build up your blaze probably to 100 before you use her liberation to reach that max stack, because you're going to be consuming these blazes across the big hits that she's doing in her liberation state. And then when she's in Inferno mode and the Resonance liberation is ready to go, if she has less than 30 blazes or she spent 8 seconds in the mode, she can cast the Last Stand, which, you know, we'll just look at the animation. We've already talked about it. It's the one where she summons the giant clock and then slams down on enemies. That one is the Last Stand. So you might be wondering, okay, we saw shit like Helical Embers, we saw stuff like Blaze. What is all of that shit? What is that? And her Forte Circuit is where all of it is basically explained. And I'm gonna be honest here. This is one of the longest Forte Circuits in the game. This might actually be the longest Forte Circuit in the game in terms of like explanation, because holy shit, she has like 2 different resources. She actually has 3 resources, 3 unique resources built into her kit. They interact with Spectral Frazzle, but it's actually not that complicated. It's genuinely not actually that complicated, but there's just a lot of words that explain it. I'll go ahead, we'll start breaking it down piece by piece so it's a bit easier to understand. So the first part is, well, the Forte Circuit is just at a baseline called There Will Be Light, and the first part, Helical Ember, is essentially her version of Spectral Frazzle. There's a reason why one of her enhanced resonance skills will inflict a stack upon the target when it hits. So let's start breaking that down a little bit. When Zani is in the team and a nearby resonator inflicts Spectral Frazzle upon a target, immediately consume all the Frazzle stacks and then trigger the corresponding damage, and then convert Spectral Frazzle into an equal number of Helical Embers. Every time the conversion happens, Zani obtains Blaze based upon the stacks of Helical Ember inflicted. So this is the thing, right? Zani will basically gain Blaze based on the number of stacks, and that means that when you have a character like Spectral Rover, right, going ahead and they're applying 6 stacks, I don't think she's gonna get 6 Blaze. I'm pretty sure there's gonna be a multiplier, because otherwise, for her to reach 100 Blaze, you would have to be on the other unit for like a minute, applying as many Spectral Frazzle stacks as possible, because this applies 6, and then the Forte Circuit applies 2. And so Phoebe herself applies 5 when she's in Confession mode. Phoebe herself applies 5 for each of her hits in using her special heavy attack, and then only 8 on her liberation. And so I imagine that there's some sort of multiple. Maybe it's like 5 per stack. Maybe it's 10. 10 to me sounds like it makes more sense. You just have to be a sub DPS, right? And then apply 10 stacks, and then she'll have 100. There will be like 100 Helical Embers, right? 10 Helical Embers, and then 100 Blaze. That's what I imagine would make sense. It could be 5 as well, or something like that, but you would have to spend a lot of time to get Zani to 100% Blaze if that's not the case. So I'm just assuming that there is going to be a multiple on this, because guess what, guys? The number of Helical Ember stacks is capped at 60. It's capped at 60. Helical Ember stacks are also counted towards the Spectral Frazzle stacks for the Eternal Radiance Sonata effect. So that just makes it pretty clear that the best in slot Sonata set you're going to have available for Zani is, of course, Eternal Radiance, because you'll be able to have constant access to that crit rate increase of 20%, as well as, of course, with 10 stacks of Spectral Frazzle or Helical Embers, right, you'll be able to have that 50% spectral damage bonus as well. So Zani should be pretty easy to build too in the long run. Next up, it's pretty clear how this works. You build up the Helical Embers using a sub DPS on your team. You could use Phoebe, you could use Rover, you could use Phoebe and Rover, hypothetically, as well, if you want to. The idea is to just get all these stacks up, max out the Blaze, because you're going to be using a lot of Blaze in the rest of her kit. And so with that, let's keep going through what else she has going on over here. When Zani is in Inferno mode, or her Resonance Liberation, she gains access to a bunch of different heavy attacks. They all become available. They'll deal spectral damage that's considered heavy attack damage and Spectral Frazzle damage. So she gains buffs and multiplier buffs from that heavy attack damage percentage, as well as the spectral damage amp, or the Spectral Frazzle amp, that you're going to have available from your team as well, right? We just covered Phoebe. We just covered Phoebe's signature and how that all interacts with it. And one thing that I also want to talk about is her weapon, which is going to give a big amp as well. And so the amp over here is looking to be like, I don't know, a total of like 100, maybe 200% total. If you get the amp from maybe like Phoebe's outro, which is 100%. You get the amp from Phoebe's signature, which is 30%. You get the amp from Phoebe's or from Zani's weapon, which is 50%. And then you get Zani's enhanced resonance skills buff as well. That's around 200%. So that's a lot of buffs that she has available if she has all of those different tools ready to go. So let's talk a little bit more about what sort of things you'll be able to do with that blaze that we're just building up over here with those helical embers. When blaze is no less than 30, basically when blaze is above 30, I don't know why they're using wording like this. Resonance skill standard defense protocol is replaced with scorching light. And that basically means Zani's going to enter the ready stance, you know, where she's bringing the sword back. We've seen that a bunch of times already. She's going to be immune to interruption. The state ends early when she's switched off the field. It's basically like her enhanced resonance skill. She's going to use it within a certain amount of time to consume blaze and then perform a heavy slash attack called Daybreak. And we'll probably see footage of it here. Not this one. Not this one. This one. Right? The ready slash, and then boom. That's heavy attack, Daybreak over there. When attacked within a certain amount of time after entering the ready state, reduce the damage by 100%, stagnate nearby enemies, and then perform Light Smash, which is going to consume blazes, and then further reduce their vibration strength by 10%. And then the damage reduction effect for 2 seconds is going to take place. And so this is the thing, right? This is essentially just a buffed version of that enhanced resonance skill that we were covering before. It's a lot of words over here because they can't just say it like does more damage. They're just repeating everything that was in her enhanced resonance skill. You can kind of see that this isn't actually that complicated. Her Forte Circuit is long because they're just basically copy and pasting her resonance skill, the same exact resonance skill over again, the enhanced version, but then switching some of the names around for the move. That's kind of like the only thing that's going on. You're also going to double the vibration strength reduction, which is again going to give you a lot of rewards for actually successfully parrying the boss versus, you know, just holding it down and then attacking. Hopefully it's a lot more clear what's going on over here. After casting heavy slash light smash, her basic attack is going to be replaced with Nightfall. And so basically, you're going to get a big benefit from using that parry move, and you'll be able to follow up with more attacks that aren't necessarily Daybreak. You're going to consume up to 40 blazes for each hit of Nightfall, and each blaze is going to increase the damage multiplier of the Nightfall slashes. And if the heavy slash Nightfall stage 1 is interrupted, you can just cast the basic attack to go on into stage 2. And then upon releasing the button after a certain time or when the ready stance ends, you're just going to use Nightfall overall in that charge up state. So this is kind of the thing, right? You're just kind of going to be, you're either going to use this move or you're going to use Daybreak. You have a lot of different options available. And this is Nightfall over here, where you're just constantly following up with attacks. The end result is that you end up just doing a bunch of wide slashes and then end with kind of like the vertical one. But you can kind of see if you don't have Blaze available, you won't be able to get off all of those hits. And when Blaze is no less than 30 or above 30, basic attack is going to be replaced with Daybreak. And after entering Inferno mode, casting the basic attack is immediately going to replace the current basic attack with the resonance skill Scorching Light. You can see what's going on over here. The idea is to just do one of these full attack chains by getting to 100 blaze via the helical embers that your teams are building up. And then you use your liberation, go to 150, and then you go to town and just start either using your skill, blocking, or just spamming the basic attack button to get all the attacks off. But if you do get a successful parry in, you're going to get a big vibration strength bonus and also block the attack. So you do have a bit of like a skill intensive reward for playing the kit properly. If you want like the simple TLDR version of her Forte Circuit, it's A, build up stacks of this Helical Ember debuff by using Spectral Frazzle on your teammates, swap over to Zani, and then proceed to use her Liberation to have max blaze, and then just start spamming the left mouse button. And you'll start doing her big attacks. Wait until her blaze is down after spamming all of her attacks, because you'll consume blaze on every single hit that you just built up by applying Frazzle. And then at the very end, when you're less than 30 blazes, well, just use your liberation and then ender state and then ender rotation. That's kind of like it. But there's a lot of complication over here. She'll be a lot easier to understand when she comes out. That's a great way to talk about it. Phoebe was left behind. Phoebe's going to be your best sub DPS. So don't worry about Phoebe falling behind if you do have her, as long as you're pulling Zani. And so, yeah, you can kind of see you're just following up with more and more attacks. After performing Daybreak, press basic attack to perform Dawning. And after performing Dawning, use basic attack again to perform Nightfall. You can see what's going on, right? All of these attacks kind of just have different moves. It would have been a lot better and a lot easier to understand, in my opinion, if they just used like a simple stage 1, 2, 3, 4. But they probably just wanted those special names in there because it is your Forte Circuit and not just their basic attacks. And so the last part is, if the basic attack is not replaced with Heavy/Nightfall after a successful dodge, and Zani has more than 30 blazes, you can press the normal attack button after a certain time to perform Light Smash at the cost of blazes. And again, each of these attacks with Blaze are going to consume around 40 per hit. And so the idea is, if you're at 150 and you're consuming 40 per hit, well, it's like 150, 110, 70, and then 30. So you get about 4 hits in. You'll get around 4 hits in before you're at 30 Blaze, and then you're going to cast her Liberation, right? You're going to cast her Liberation and then do that final move. This is the start of her Liberation. And then this is the move that you do that's only accessible when you're at 30 Blaze or lower, or you've been in the form for 8 seconds. So that's how it works. Is that clear? Hopefully that's more clear now. We spent quite a bit of time explaining that because this is just a lot of words, but I personally don't think it's that complicated. You build up the blazes, you get to 100, you cast the Liberation, you get to 150, and then you have access to about 4 attacks in that state. Each one consumes 40. And then when you get to 30, use her final hit. And that's kind of it. Redundant Energy. That's going to be her baseline Forte Circuit. She can hold up to 100. She gains some when normal attacks hit. She gains some when she uses her intro skill, Immediate Execution. She gains some when she uses her Resonance skill. She gains some when she uses a parry. And she cannot gain it in Inferno mode. And you need 100 to use her Enhanced Resonance skill. It's just her baseline Forte Circuit. You can think about it as like the same exact Forte Circuit as like a Zhang Liao. We all know how Zhang Liao has capacity, but you don't actually use this attack very often in his rotations. It's going to be the same exact thing for Zani, in my opinion, right? Zhang Liao, we know that like his regular Forte Circuit doesn't matter that much because he kind of just drops in, uses his Liberation, and then uses the Forte Circuit in his Liberation mode to actually deal most of his damage. You don't really use like this attack very often unless you're in like the overworld. And it's going to be a similar situation for Zani, in my opinion, if you're doing optimal rotations to deal as much damage as possible. So this is kind of just going to be like an overworld only mechanic. And so you're not going to be actually using that Enhanced Resonance skill too often. However, now that I think about it, I might be wrong on that because Zani does get a bit of a significant buff called Sunburst. And so it might be worth using one of those Enhanced Resonance skills right before she uses her Liberation. That probably makes sense, right? Because you're gonna want that 20% amp. So you probably do want to use one of these Enhanced Resonance skills, Crisis Response Protocol, right before she uses her Liberation to gain that full damage buff. So yeah, I'll stand corrected on that one. You probably do actually want that. Next, you're gonna have her secondary Forte Circuit, which is only available in her Liberation, and that's gonna be Blaze. It's capped at 100 when you're not in Inferno mode. It goes to 150 in Inferno mode. Casting targeted action or forcible riposte is going to grant 10 blazes right off the bat. We're just going to go ahead and see over here which one's targeted action. Targeted action or forcible riposte is going to give you 10. And so yeah, that Enhanced Resonance skill is definitely a good idea to cast every single rotation. To both get Blaze, get the Spectral Frazzle damage amplification buff, and of course, right, potentially parry and attack too. So that's going to be that. You're going to also get 5 Blaze. So I knew there was going to be a multiplier on it. For every stack of Helical Ember that's converted from Spectral Frazzle. And so naturally, right, you're going to want to apply about 20 stacks of Frazzle to gain a full Blaze bar before you hop on Zani. But you can more so cast like 19 maybe instead, and it still should be fine. Yeah, you should be able to still get like 19 or 18. Because you'll still get 10 blazes from using this. And so you can kind of see that Phoebe is like the perfect character for her, because Phoebe at a baseline is going to apply 10 in her confession mode and then 18 over here, right? So that's 18 stacks, or essentially 18 times 5 is going to be 90. You get 90 blaze from using Phoebe's entire rotation, and then you get the last 10 from using Zani's Enhanced Resonance skill. So they're kind of like 1 and 1. And if you use Phoebe's entire rotation, you should be able to get the full 100 blazes if you just pop in on Zani and then use her enhanced resident skill via the redundant energy. And then you use her liberation, and then you're at the 150. Phoebe gets 19 stacks. True, actually. She does 1 stack when she enters confession mode. You're entirely right. I guess you'll be at 95 blaze if you don't use your enhanced resident skill. Unfortunately, right, what this is also going to mean is that, well, Spectral Rover is probably not going to be able to build up a lot of stacks unless you do some crazy quick swapping, because Spectral Rover only gives you about, I think, 8 stacks every rotation, where you have 2 from over here. The Shimmer debuff is going to be useless for Zani because Spectral Frazzle has no duration on Zani's team, so this whole Shimmer debuff actually does nothing. So that's going to be 2 over here and then 8. But with the cooldown of this ability only being 6 seconds, you might be able to like quick swap a lot during your support's rotation to build up as many stacks as possible. But it is going to be a bit rough, in my opinion, to at least get a full blaze bonus during Zani's rotation if this is the only Spectral Frazzle applier on the team. And so Phoebe is going to feel kind of necessary if you're going to want a full blaze on Zani and kind of like a full damage rotation. However, we still have to see what that level of performance is in a more like free-to-play manner, and then kind of like draw some conclusions from that over there. So yeah, Spectral Rover in an optimized rotation should be able to get 10 Frazzle stacks pretty easily, but that's going to only be about 50 blaze. While Phoebe's just going to shit out 19 on like accident when she's in her lineups. So that could be a little bit unfortunate depending on how it goes. We'll just have to see how the kit works. Now, let's move on to the way less complicated stuff. We've got immediate execution, which basically she just attacks and then recovers redundant energy. Cool. We've also got the outro skill, Beacon for the Future. She's going to attack the target, deal spectral damage equal to 150% of Zani's attack, and remove all stacks of Helical Ember inflicted upon the target. Each stack increases the damage dealt by 10%, and you have a max of 60 stacks. So that's, I think, 600% potential increase. The damage is considered spectral frazzle damage, and then the spectral damage dealt by other resonators in the team to the target marked by the Helical Ember is amplified by 20% for 20 seconds. So Zani's first rotation should hypothetically not deal as much damage as her second one, because she should have this buff actually active for at least a little bit on her second rotation. That's my opinion. And so you also have the potential over here to actually, maybe, it depends on whether or not Helical Embers will count for Phoebe's absolution state. You could potentially think about running like a dual DPS between Phoebe and Zani if that's actually the case. However, I don't know if Helical Embers will count as Spectral Frazzle for the purposes of building up Phoebe's damage bonus in the absolution state. So we'll just have to see how that whole shebang works, because Phoebe, right? She gains a 256% damage amp on her heavy attack if the target's hit have Spectral Frazzle. And if Helical Embers count, well, yeah, you might be able to do a bit of a dual DPS lineup just to like try it out and everything. So it's pretty clear, right? Zani as a whole, you want heavy attack damage as her main damage type, but Phoebe is also going to be one of her biggest amps, especially when she's in her liberation state. Now let's look at her inherent skills. She's going to have quick response. Using an intro skill, immediate execution is going to give her a spectral damage bonus of 12%. Very cool. And when in ready stance, all damage taken is reduced by 40, which is okay. Like, I guess if you want to like tank it. And now they got like a bit of a combat guide going on. I've already kind of like indicated it, what's going on. I'm liking that they're putting this in here though, to sort of break down how she's going to work and maybe some of the attacks that they were doing in some of those gameplay clips. And so yeah, she restores the Forte gauge when other resonators inflict Spectral Frazzle. She enters an enhanced state upon casting her liberation, and in the enhanced state, consume Forte gauge to cast enhanced basic attacks. And these enhanced basic attacks deal heavy attack and Spectral Frazzle damage. And then hitting a target recovers Forte, consume Forte to cast that enhanced resonant skill that buffs this state that she's going to go into in Liberation even more. And these are just some of like the basic combos, a basic breakdown of what's going on. And overall, I don't think her kit is actually that complicated. The only reason why it's complicated, or you might think it is because they're using unique names for every single attack in her Forte circuit, but it's kind of just basic attack spam. After you build up your Forte circuit, Blaze from using other members of your team, and they just copy and pasted her entire resonance skill over again, and then double the vibration strength reduction on a parry. And when it comes to her echo set, there's kind of only one main option. You're 1,000,000% going to want Eternal Radiance on her. And if it wasn't clear already why you want Eternal Radiance, it has all that free crit. And also, right, she has a special tagline in her Forte circuit that directly synergizes with its effect. She has a special tagline in her Forte circuit that directly synergizes with its effect. You could also think about using something like, if you do have like a Jinsei build available, Celestial Light, but I don't really recommend it. The other reason why Eternal Radiance is so good is that Phoebe herself is also a Resonator that uses it and specializes in heavy attack damage. But the thing is, if Phoebe's going to be supporting Zani, you're probably also going to want her on Moonlit Clouds instead to buff Zani's attack and damage. And on the flip side, you can just give Phoebe set to Zani, right? All of those heavy attack damage rolls that you have are going to benefit Zani as well, and main DPS Phoebe. So on the grinding side, this is actually a bit more of like in a way, it's like free to play, it's like budget, because you won't necessarily need to farm another Echo set. And of course, right, you're also probably going to want Capitanius. My Capitaniuses suck ass, and you're going to want the Capitaniuses over here so that, well, Zani's going to be able to get that 12% Spectral and then 12% heavy attack damage bonus. And they both use a gigantic sword, which is kind of cool. That's going to be the Echo recommendations. I don't recommend you use Celestial Light because, yeah, it's just not going to be that good on it. So hopefully that has painted a much more clear overview of how her kit is going to work. If you want the TLDR, make sure you pull Phoebe if you want her to reach her full potential, even when it comes to like building up her Forte Circuit and dealing damage. If you want to play her in a more free-to-play lineup with maybe like Spectral Rover, do keep in mind you will have a big struggle managing her resources, a big struggle building up those helical embers, and actually getting the full damage out of her kit. And if you want like something crazy, maybe you run Phoebe and Spectral Rover in the same team, and who knows what the hell that could lead to. That might actually be a decent lineup, considering the fact that Spectral Rover, well, heals. So with that, let me know what you all think. Hopefully this overview was helpful, and peace out.